In Wyoming's elk country, wildlife biologists started noticing something in the early 2010s that the population models could not fully explain. Elk numbers in certain herds were declining, not dramatically, not in a way that made headlines, slowly, steadily. Year after year, fewer animals than the surveys predicted. Hunters blamed wolves. State agencies ran predator counts. The wolf numbers were not high enough to explain what the data was showing. Something else was moving through the herds. Something the wolves had nothing to do with. Scientists already knew what it was. They had known since 1967, when researchers at a Colorado State University wildlife research facility in Fort Collins first observed captive mule deer wasting away from an unidentified neurological condition. The animals lost weight, they stumbled, they drooled, they lost their fear of humans. They walked toward people who should have sent them running, and they kept losing weight until there was nothing left. The researchers initially thought it was malnutrition. It took 11 more years before pathologists Elizabeth Williams and Stuart Young examined the brain tissue and identified the lesions for what they were: a transmissible spongiform encephalopathy, a prion disease. They called it chronic wasting disease. Nobody paid close attention for a long time. CWD stayed within a contained geographic zone in Colorado and Wyoming for the first 2 decades after its discovery. The first confirmed wild elk case came in 1981 in Colorado. Wildlife agencies classified it as a regional management problem, the kind of thing that gets monitored, reported annually, and handled through regulated hunting. Serious but not alarming. Then it crossed the Mississippi River. In 2002, CWD was detected east of the Mississippi for the first time. By 2010, it had reached the Atlantic coast. As of July 2026, it has been confirmed in 37 US states, 5 Canadian provinces, and in wild reindeer populations in Norway, Sweden, and Finland. It reached South Korea through imported deer. It is no longer a regional problem. It is a continental one that has started going global. Here is what makes CWD different from every other wildlife disease currently tracked by federal agencies in North America. CWD is not caused by a virus. It is not caused by a bacterium. It is caused by a prion, which is not a living organism at all. It is a misfolded protein, a normal, harmless protein that every mammal already produces, that when it encounters an abnormal misfolded version of itself, converts, folds into the same wrong shape, and then that converted protein triggers the next one, and the next. The brain fills with misfolded proteins that the immune system cannot recognize as foreign, because they are not foreign. They are made of the animal's own tissue. The immune system does not fight them. Nothing does. The disease is always fatal. 100% of infected animals die from it. There is no cure. There is no vaccine. There is no treatment that slows progression once infection is established. Those 3 facts have not changed since 1978, when the disease was first properly characterized, and they have not changed since. The incubation period is 18 to 24 months. An infected elk walks through the herd for up to 2 years before showing any visible symptoms. It is shedding prions into the environment through its saliva, its urine, its feces, and its blood the entire time. The grass it grazes on becomes contaminated. The soil it walks across becomes contaminated. The water it drinks from becomes contaminated. Prions do not break down the way biological pathogens do. They are resistant to heat, radiation, and standard chemical disinfection. A pasture where an infected deer grazed in 2018 may still carry infectious prions in 2030. The environment itself becomes a transmission vector with no expiration date. This is what separates CWD from a disease like avian influenza, which spreads fast and burns through populations but can be cleared. You cannot clear a prion from the landscape. Once a region is seeded, it stays seeded. The only question is how long before the next susceptible animal grazes through. In established hotspots where CWD has been present for years, infection rates in wild deer and elk run between 10 and 25%. In some captive herds where the disease has had enough time, prevalence has reached between 79 and 100%. Every animal in the enclosure. The 10% becomes 25%, becomes every animal if you wait long enough and do nothing effective to interrupt it. For a long time, the story was framed as a hunter's problem, a wildlife management problem, something the agencies were handling. The framing made sense in the 1980s when CWD was confined to a research facility in Colorado. It makes less sense when the disease has reached 37 states and the infected population is measured in the tens of millions of animals. The total deer population in the United States is estimated at 35 million animals. White-tailed deer live in every state in farm fields adjacent to suburbs at the edges of every town. They are the primary reservoir for a disease that is expanding its geographic range with no sign of slowing. The obvious question, the one most people ask when they learn how CWD spreads and how fast it is moving, is whether this can jump to humans. The honest answer as of 2026 is that no confirmed human case exists. The CDC, the USDA, and every major public health authority will tell you that. What they will also tell you, if you read the fine print, is that the species barrier is not absolute. A study published in Science Advances in 2026 demonstrated that CWD prions can infect cynomolgus macaques, a non-human primate, under controlled laboratory conditions. Macaques are among the most genetically proximate animals to humans. The species barrier that was assumed to protect humans from CWD was shown, in that study, to be permeable under the right experimental conditions. Not proven to apply to natural human exposure, but permeable. Prions do not stay fixed. They evolve when they move between host species, encountering slightly different cellular environments, adapting to them. The concern that wildlife health researchers and CDC epidemiologists have been raising with increasing specificity over the past decade is not that CWD will jump to humans tomorrow. It is that CWD is spreading into more cervid populations across more geography every year, producing more opportunities for that prion to encounter new hosts. And that the longer the disease spreads unchecked across a continent, the more chances the prion has to adapt in ways that widen the species barrier. Approximately 6 million Americans hunt deer and elk every year. Hunters in CWD endemic zones are encouraged to have harvested animals tested before consuming the meat. Testing rates remain low. Most states offer voluntary testing, not mandatory. In Wyoming, one of the oldest endemic zones in the country, the statewide CWD prevalence in hunter-harvested mule deer reached 21% in 2025. In the worst affected herds, the numbers are much higher. The project herd in the Wind River Basin tests positive in 66% of adult bucks. The Shoshone River herd runs at 47%. Hunters eating untested venison from those areas are not eating from a population with a low background risk. They are eating from a population where most of the adult males are infected. The agencies know this. The researchers have been clear about it. The language in federal wildlife reports is careful and measured, as it should be when the science is still developing. But the data underneath that language is not ambiguous. The disease is spreading. The rate of geographic expansion has accelerated. The tools available to stop it are inadequate. There is no effective management solution that works at continental scale. Regulated hunting reduces deer density, which slows spread locally but does not stop it. Restricting carcass transport across state lines reduces the movement of infected material, but cannot stop a live infected animal from walking across a state border on its own. The disease keeps spreading because the soil keeps the prions, the water keeps the prions, and an infected animal in its silent incubation phase seeds clean territory before any agency knows it is there. In 2025, Georgia recorded its first confirmed CWD case.
Georgia DNR says a hunter-harvested deer has tested positive for the first positive case of chronic wasting disease in the state. It was harvested in Lanier County. Chronic wasting disease is a deadly neurological disease that moose, deer, and elk can get. So far, there's no known transmission to humans.
Georgia did not border any previously confirmed state at the time. The disease had arrived the same way it has arrived everywhere, through an animal that looked healthy, moved normally, and left contaminated ground behind it. The elk numbers in Wyoming are still being counted. The models are still being revised. The disease that began at a single research facility in Fort Collins, Colorado in 1967 has now reached 37 states, crossed an ocean, and arrived in countries that had never recorded a prion disease in wild cervids before. Nobody is calling it terrifying in official language. The language stays measured and precise, but the trajectory is what it is. And the line the researchers watch most carefully, the one between a wildlife crisis and a public health one, has not been crossed yet. Every year that the disease expands its range and infects more animals is another year of chances for that line to move. Tell me in the comments, at what point does a disease spreading this fast with no cure, no vaccine, and no effective containment at scale stop being a wildlife problem?